Hi everybody, it's Mel here. Welcome back once again to my channel, Pebbles and Peach. Today we are back for another episode of van life in a series in which I talk about all the different aspects of van life in each of the different countries that I visited in our big trip around Europe, and these include things like access to water, what campsites were like, where to shop, all that kind of stuff. And today we are talking about van life in Italy, and I can't believe it, we're done in like 2 more episodes after this, so the series is starting to wrap up now. Thank you to everyone who's come along on the journey with me. But yeah, let's get stuck into van life in Italy, and I'm sure you've seen the thumbnail. This is definitely more of a dramatic episode than most of the other episodes, as there was a lot happened in Italy, and yeah, let's get into that. So like I said, Italy, there was a lot that happened. We had some drama, we had, good times, bad times. Like, it was, to be honest, it was the place that we stayed the longest, like, on our whole trip. So I feel like it was more likely for stuff like that to happen, but we basically did the entire, like, we came in from Switzerland, so kind of like right bang in the middle, like Lake Como. And then we straight went over towards Venice, and we did the entire east coast right the way down to like basically nearly the bottom of the hill, and then we cut across up to the Amalfi coast, and then basically right up the other side into the south of France. So we got to see a lot of Italy, the good sides, the not so good sides, and yeah, I'm gonna get all into that today. So like I said, I'm sure you guys seen the thumbnail and are wondering what in the hell happened. There was some definitely scary moments that happened in Italy, and yeah, we're going to get into that later on in the video. But first we'll start off with what I usually start off with, which is fuel, like what kind of prices were fuel, that kind of thing. In Italy, it is a little bit more on the expensive side, not massively, but you're talking about between €1.50 to €1, like I've seen it as high as like 80, 90 in a lot of places. And getting fuel in Italy is very, very strange process. If you are going to, like, they have a lot of self-service places and you pay by card, they basically take like £100 out of your account, and then if you've only put like a tenner of fuel in, then you get 90 back. So it's a really, really weird system, and the first time that we used it we actually panicked and was like, oh, this weird phony machine is taking like €100 out of our account, when actually it's just this weird system that they have in place. And I think it's a system to kind of stop petrol theft, so people like use their card but actually don't have that money in their account. So yeah, they basically take like the maximum that you can fill out and then give you the rest back. So we weren't a big fan of that, and we ended up trying to pay cash always if we could with regards to fuel. They also have something we're not used to here in the UK. You can rock up, and if you go to a certain side of the pumps, then someone will basically come up, fill your car, your van up for you, and then it will cost you like extra. So just be careful that you don't go to the, I think it's Servito, I can't remember now, so I might have got that wrong, but you don't want to go to the ones where people pump you into your car. You need to go to the other side where you can do it yourself. Next up is water, and water, we didn't really have much of an issue in Italy. It was fairly accessible most of the time at any of like the camper spots that you find on Park for Night or little stations, like, or actually at some of the fuel stations we could get water fine. I think we maybe struggled like once or twice when we were kind of more in the middle of nowhere, but like we got by. It wasn't too much of an issue, so I really don't think it was a massive problem getting water in Italy. Now on to shopping and where we regularly shopped. We shopped mostly in these stores called Familia stores, and they're not as cheap as you would be used to with like Lidl and stuff like that, but we found that the quality of the products were like really, really good. And yeah, it was just a really cool store to shop in. We did most of our shopping in those stores and got by fine. It wasn't massively expensive, it just wasn't super, super cheap either. It was definitely somewhere kind of around the middle, but you could get loads of really nice like fresh cheeses and meats and some really nice products in there. So we actually ended up mostly shopping in those. There are other stores that you can visit in Italy. We just don't have much experience with the other stores because we really, really enjoyed the Familia stores, and they were always really accessible. Like even if you're in like a little tiny town somewhere like down the south of Italy, and we visited like Ostuni, which is this tiny little village, just outside of it you could get to like a Familia store, so they tended to be there quite a lot. And yeah, that's mainly where we shopped, but like I said, it's kind of in between. It's not as cheap as you'd be used to if you shop somewhere like Lidl. Next up we have showers, and access to showers was a bit on the awkward side. We were in Italy definitely out of season, so like end of October, start of November, and yeah, like all the places that would regularly be busy in the summer, like all like the beaches and all that kind of stuff, all the showers had been turned off, and like most of the places that were thought to be open and like Park for Night and stuff were actually closed because they were totally out of season. So we started to find it a little bit tricky to get showers, but it was still like we were still getting unbelievable weather, except for like 1 or 2 nights we had thunderstorms. But apart from that, like it was the hottest country. Oh my gosh, I forgot to mention this. I got eaten alive by mosquitoes in Italy. Like I did not realize like how bad it is for mosquitoes, and the tiger mosquitoes just loved me. I ended up in hospital in Italy. I have so much drama from Italy. I ended up in hospital in Italy because I had like an unidentified bite, and they were worried about me, and they basically, the pharmacist, I thought she was going to be like, yeah, it's cool, don't worry, it's just a bite. She sent me to the hospital, and I had to get like tetanus shot and like go on steroids and antibiotics, and it's not something I expected, but freaking bugs, biting bugs just love me. And that actually happened to be a spider bite, not a mosquito bite. I don't know why I'm talking about this in the shower section. It's because I think I was thinking more like we outdoor showered a lot more than we usually did in each of the other countries, just because we had the better weather for it. And if we weren't doing that, if we stopped by campsites, you can get to really affordable campsites in Italy, then we just use the showers there. So kind of similar to what we did in Germany, was mostly just showered outside. But yeah, the caveat to that is that the bugs just frigging loved me, and I had an absolute nightmare at the time. Like I'm sure you guys maybe seen the video where I had my bug bat out, and I actually think I made the keeping bugs out of your van video whenever I was in Italy. Like it was so bad, and like it's weird because I thought at that time of year like there wouldn't be many bugs about, but nope, there was definitely a lot of bugs. Now on to the wild camping. The wild camping in Italy was amazing. We didn't really have any issues getting anywhere to park. Weirdly, one of our favourite like wild camping spots was near Lake Garda. We found this spot, and it was like a 2-part car park, but the part that we stayed in, like literally we seen no other cars like the entire time that we stayed there. We stayed there for a couple of days, and one other family joined us one night in a big massive like RV camper van type of thing, but apart from that, like we didn't see anybody. It was just this really remote part, but we could like walk into this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful town, and we went out for dinner there one night. So yeah, weirdly, like I normally like to be wild, like out in nature, near forests and stuff, but we had a great time staying in that car park and just kind of had the place to ourselves, which was great. But we saw some of the most beautiful wild camping spots that we saw on our entire trip. We're in Italy, down in the Puglia region, where we met up with our friends Fred and Bronte, who are an Australian couple who are also travelling, and we met up with them multiple times on this trip. If you guys have watched the vlogs, you'll have met them already. But we met up in Puglia, in Tuscany, in Portofino, in Spain, in Amsterdam, and yeah, so we kind of followed a very similar route to those guys, and we just kept meeting up, and hopefully they're going to come over here to Northern Ireland and spend a bit of time with us this year. But yeah, we wild camped with those guys a good bit, and yeah, it was great. Like, we never really had much issues. There's a lot of little like camper spots where you can literally just pull in and camp for the night, and we used those quite a bit, especially on the western side. It's weird because we stayed like on the eastern side, we were definitely more like wild, middle of nowhere, remote, and then on the west side we actually kind of stayed more, so we were still wild, but we went to like camper spots where you could kind of park in and there'd be another couple of campers there, and most of those were free. Okay, but also the downside with wild camping is, like I told you guys, we shot over basically in a day. We drove from like one side of Italy to the other, so we went from Puglia to the Amalfi Coast, and we'd seen this spot on Park for Night that looked like it was going to be beautiful, and you know what, we arrived and it was beautiful. Absolutely amazing evening. We were about to see if we wanted to park there. I get out of the van with my camera to take some beautiful pictures of the scenery, and then we realise that there are 3 freaking teenagers just standing there, one of them like fully brandishing a machete, like, I mean, actually just like holding it, like he was not trying to hide it when we arrived, he was like holding it over his shoulder. It was just really, really weird, and like I felt really weird vibes, and Aaron kind of realised, and he like tapped me, and then I was like, yeah, I seen, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to it, so I was like, oh, took my picture, and then we sort of just made our way back to the van. But I did not have a good night that night. I was really, really freaked out by it, like, because there was no reason in this area for that kid to have a machete, like, other than, I don't know what he was thinking, but there was no like things to cut or anything like that. It was just like a cliffside where you could see like a big part of the Amalfi Coast. So yeah, it was a bit weird, and it was probably the most intimidated I've ever felt, like in my entire life, never mind in my entire trip on van life. Like, it was really, really scary. And it was really odd. It was just 3 kids on mopeds with freaking machetes, like what in the actual world. So I was terrified, and I basically wasn't obviously comfortable staying there. So Aaron and I drove for like a flipping hour into like Sorrento or something, because I was like, I just need to get like well away from what just happened. And even then, just did not have a good night's sleep. Like, I was freaked out for probably a couple of days after that experience. It was just really, really weird. But enough with the doom and gloom. Let's move on to the highlights of the trip. I've already mentioned one of my big highlights was staying down in the Puglia region with our friends Freddie and Bronte. We had a really, really good time with those guys. Like, we literally had the spot to ourselves where we had this private cove where we could go swim in the Adriatic Sea, and the Adriatic Sea was bloody beautiful. There was even a moment actually just in the spot that Aaron and I had stayed before that, and is it Vieste? Literally just a couple of days prior, we found this beautiful location where we met some stray dogs and made friends with some stray dogs, and on that day we seen some dolphins in the Adriatic. It was so weird because I was like, oh, do you know what, I just wish I could see some dolphins on the trip because I hadn't seen any yet. Not even kidding, about 5 minutes later I must have summoned them, because then we just see all these beautiful like dolphins swimming in the Adriatic Ocean, and the Adriatic Ocean is, oh my god, it's like stunningly beautiful. I've never seen water like it. Like, we literally, on that cove that we stayed in down in Puglia, the water was crystal clear. Next up we have Florence. I absolutely loved Florence. It was an incredibly beautiful city. Like, I talked to you guys I think last week about van life in Germany, and I mentioned the cathedral in Cologne, and I was like, nothing will ever live up to that cathedral. It was too beautiful, too massive, like crazy. And then I go to Florence and see the cathedral there, and my mind was just re-blown. Like, that place was beautiful, stunning architecture. Like, that whole city was just like, everywhere you looked there was some like amazingly stunning architecture. And what was really cool is I really love Dante's Inferno, and Dante was born in Florence and died in Ravenna, So we got to see where he was born, and also when we were over on the other side in Ravenna, we got to see his grave, and that was just like a very surreal moment for me. I can't explain why, but yeah, that was really, really cool. So those were my highlights. Now we're on to the bum cheeks, the downsides, the not so great stuff about van life in Italy. Obviously up there is going to be that machete incident, absolutely terrifying, hated every second, wanted to just, like, that was the time where I was like, I just want to go home, I don't want to be here anymore, that is terrifying. It's really weird, there's almost like this invisible border with Italy, like the north is very, very beautiful and quite clean, and the roads, they're not great, but they're not as bad as further down south. The further south you go, the more like the place seems to get. Like you'd literally be driving in a road that seems like the middle of nowhere, and somehow there's rubbish all down in the sides, even in the wild spots, like there's just rubbish. Like the place is just full of rubbish. I don't know if I'm getting that across, but I did not expect. I holidayed mostly in Italy like before we did this trip and thought it was beautiful, and then we stayed there for that long period, and yeah, it's not as clean as I thought. Like it's so dirty, and the roads are absolutely, oh my gosh, let's not even start on the driving. The driving was absolutely horrendous. Like people just pull out in front of each other. It's like aggressive driving central. Like everyone will just pull out in front of you. It's crazy, it's scary, there's so many near accidents. And in a van, when you end up in a town and there's all these tiny little streets that you can't even really fit down, and we went down the wrong way one time and literally had to like reverse the entire way back up. We had people trying to help us back up the street. Like it was a nightmare. The roads are an absolute freaking nightmare, and that's probably why they have like all those toll roads where they have the toll roads, which are kind of decent, and they obviously want you to pay and use those, but we tried so hard to avoid toll roads. But in Italy, that's where I ended up using them the most, because the roads were just horrendous, and it would take you literally about 3 times as long to get somewhere not using the toll roads. And there's roundabouts like flipping everywhere. Like the roads were just crazy, and the driving is just insane. And for some reason, like we talked to a couple of the like locals about it, and they just don't seem to think that it's as crazy as it is. And that's really the main negatives of Italy. Like it's weird, Italy's like a roller coaster for me. Like I had some of the greatest times there, I had some of the worst times there. There were some of the most beautiful spots, there were some of the most disgusting spots. Like we ended up in this city, and God, I can't even tell you the name of it, because as soon as we went in we wanted to get out, but it was down like the very, very south, like the middle of nowhere, and we'd only gone there to try and get some gas, and the place looked like it was in a completely different country. It was like sandy and weird, and there was rubbish everywhere, and we drove in and like all these people just like stared at us like when we drove. Oh, it was just weird. It was really giving me creepy vibes. Did not like being there, so we didn't stay there very long. We like looked for gas and then got straight back out. It was different. That pretty much wraps up van life in Italy. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up, to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and to hit the little notification bell. It really, really does help me out. And yeah, this is probably a bit of a strange video. It's a little bit more dramatic than these videos tend to be, but that's literally just my experience. And yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next upload. Bye guys.
I'll raise a glass to you, and you'll raise a glass to me.